Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the Kinstone 103 ST. This is a Android tablet that has, as the name implies, a 10.3-inch display, and it's a budget tablet that sells for only around $155. And I really have to say that these budget Android tablets have been getting a lot better, especially in the past 2 years or so. It seems like Android tablets have started to become a bit more popular again. This one in particular seems to give us quite a lot for a very modern looking design that has super minimal bezels on the sides, and for that price you're also getting a fairly respectable 4 gigs of RAM, coupled with Android 11, a Full HD IPS display, an octa-core processor, along with support for 4G LTE. So this is a cellular tablet as well. You can even use it to make phone calls, but more importantly, if you're not connected via Wi-Fi, you can still access the internet. Plus a respectable 7,500 milliamp hour capacity battery. Also the very purposeful square edges, and that just makes it look a little bit more premium, although as we can see there on the rear, it seems inspired by the iPad Pro, to say the least, with its large camera array there on the back for a tablet. It looks a little bit ridiculous, but definitely makes it seem more premium than it is. The rear camera, by the way, is 13 megapixels and does have LED flash, but it is just a single lens. So the 2 other camera sensors on here are fake and just for decorative purposes. But almost everything else about this budget tablet I've been pretty impressed with thus far, especially when it comes to performance and the way that it feels, as the entire body is constructed out of this aluminum alloy that's very solid to the touch. Now, more specifically, the processor octa-core clocked at 1.8 GHz is the Unisoc T610, and though it's by no means a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 killer, things do feel pretty responsive when it comes to general navigation, and we'll certainly see that later on in this video. Anyways, taking a closer look on the right-hand spine of the tablet, we have access to a power key which is textured and very tactile, surprisingly, to press on, coupled with a volume rocker as well as the dual SIM card slots. Yes, it supports 2 slots. One of them can be a micro SD card that you can use to supplement the 64 gigs of built-in storage. Now on the very top you'll find one speaker. There is stereo separation because the second speaker is located on the other side, which is actually pretty neat. And for the most part it works quite well for watching back some quick video clips. There's also a modern USB Type-C charging port, syncing, as well as a 3.5mm headphone jack. One thing that you won't find on here would be pogo contacts, since there is no optional, let's say, keyboard dock, nor does this one support a active stylus. Packaging-wise, though, it is very simple, in fact a little bit generic. We have just the box here, reiterating some of the specs. It's super slim, by the way, in terms of the box, and that's taking up not much space at all, aside from the tablet. We have just a wall adapter and a USB Type-C charging cable. Now on the side here, we do also have a front-facing selfie cam, which is 5 megapixels, and that completes the entire design. Now I have to point out that the 10.3-inch size, it's interesting, because most common Android tablets will use 10.1 inches, but lately I've been seeing a lot more of these flexible screen sizes pop up. So 10.3 inches, there's also a number of 10.4 and also 10.5 inch screens on the market now as well. So it's almost like in the past year, there's been more diversity in those small 0.1 inch sizes. Overall though, we are talking about a device that's very good for web browsing and interacting with watching videos, and for sure bigger than our smartphone displays, despite our phones now having, let's say, a 6-inch diagonal. Now out of the box there is a factory pre-applied screen protector, and there's 2 layers to that screen protector. The first one on top is kind of a matte surface, which I've left on, but you can also peel it off to get a glossy texture if you want something that will have a little bit more contrast on the display and just colors will pop a bit more. But the matte protector, if you leave it on, will reduce glare so you can see it a little bit more easily outdoors, and I personally really like this paper-like texture when it comes to swiping with your fingers. It feels very responsive. We have a pretty stock version of Android 11 running on here that hasn't been thankfully loaded with too much extras aside from the essentials and Google apps. In fact, everything else you can use to store the content and media apps that you actually want. So out of the box, there's over 55 gigs remaining for you to use. Dragging down the shade, in fact, we can see if we have the 2 SIM cards connected or not, as you can see there, along with changing into a power saving mode. There's even an ultra battery saving mode, including just making phone calls, text messages, and that's it. So it tries to preserve battery even more. Although the 7,500 mAh pack, I've personally found to be already quite good for lasting me around 2 days or so of usage. The tablet does have built-in GPS as well, so you can use it for Google Maps, no issues there, and antenna reception for the most part has been quite good. The tablet does allow you to use full screen gestures for navigation, which is definitely great, so it takes advantage of the slim bezels, and you're able to just simply swipe up to interact with everything. And by default, you actually don't get a universal app tray, but you can bring that back just by long holding for a few seconds, tapping on home settings, tap on home screen, and you have the options from here, whether you want to have all of the apps displayed on the desktop or bring back the app drawer. So that's the latter that we've selected, and now we have this ability added back. Now, speaking of the display, I overall find it to be quite good, especially at this price range. Again, overall very slim bezels, full lamination, so there's no annoying glare, and it does get reasonably bright as well. Even if there's a bit of sunlight hitting on it, it still is easy enough to read with wide viewing angles, thanks to the IPS technology. I think it performs better than expected for this price range. If we jump into, let's say, the camera performance just very quickly, I personally think camera should be just a very small overall role when it comes to tablets, since our phones will still be our primary shooters, but as long as it's good enough for scanning in documents, I would say it's fair, and this definitely does the trick there. If you just tap, I can easily snap a shot. 13 megapixels is plentiful. You can tell that it is a little slow to capture a shot, but again, for a tablet camera, it suffices, and you do have the ability to turn on HDR, in addition to take a look at some additional settings that you can swipe here in terms of recording video up to full HD, as well as changing things like the resolution. You can further tweak, but not a ton of settings, but like I said, good enough for a tablet camera. So here's a few example shots that we captured recently. Again, if there is plenty of light around you, you'll find that overall quality is quite good. It still is decent in terms of preserving details. Nothing crazy on here like optical image stabilization, of course, but again, for a tablet camera, more than respectable. And then a few more shots here to give you an idea of what it's like just scanning in text. Now, as we're interacting with the apps here, I think one other thing that's apparent is, despite this being a budget tablet, it doesn't feel slow or clunky. I'm not really seeing any dropped frames or even any moments of hesitation here. Just daily interaction with the tablet feels smooth. Let's try load up something even a little bit more complex, such as The Verge. And you can see you get a pretty nice experience in terms of typing and text entry with the standard Gboard. And let's try and just click on The Verge. You can see how fast it took there just to load this up. And that's quite impressive, again, considering the price of this tablet. Now, certain elements on the page, as you can see there, will take a split second longer to render, but still scrolling feels smooth. Nothing is jerky. And this is a very complex page, definitely with a lot of elements, ads, videos, and details, but for the most part, it still is very enjoyable to use. Pinch to zoom feels responsive, and generally, again, just a very pleasurable experience. Now, this is still a 16:9 aspect ratio screen compared to, say, iPads, which may have a more boxy aspect ratio. So in terms of content, it works a little bit better when it comes to, let's say, watching back videos, or if you're browsing the web, I generally prefer to hold it just in the horizontal view. You can just tell how quick it loads. So the Unisoc processor doing very well, plus the strong reception quality definitely is helping that. The entire thing remains very cool to the touch during the entire operation, never really thermal throttles, so energy efficient in that regard. And again, we can jump back and forth between these tabs, very good. So web browsing is not going to be an issue on this tablet. So we can see about 1.4 gigs is being used despite having a handful of tabs already open. Now doing a quick demo of what it's like in terms of watching back a video on YouTube. So things are very quick to load for sure. And we can jump into this full screen view, crank up the volume of the speakers as well. So overall impressions there is the speaker quality I think is also pretty good, I have to say, for a budget tablet. Definitely is doing above average, doesn't sound too tinny, and has good enough volume as well to make it immersive and good separation since they're on the two ends of the tablet. Videos are very quick to load, similar to web pages, so you won't really be buffering or sitting there for too long when it comes to playing things back, which is awesome. Now, in terms of if you're trying to load back Netflix, unfortunately you can only watch them in SD because of the DRM L1 certification that it's pretty common on most of these lower cost tablets. So you really need L3 if you want to go into full HD, but overall the videos are still quick to load and looks good enough, honestly, for something like this. And again, when it comes to YouTube, other shows, other sites, you're definitely able to take advantage of the full HD as well as local files, of course, really without any issues. So this will more than handle things like a bit of split screen multitasking. You can watch back a video, things will still load back quite easily without much slowdowns while you do something else like browse an article on the other side. Similarly, if you connect it to, let's say, a Bluetooth keyboard or mouse, you can also use it to, let's say, use Google Docs and get a little bit of even emails as well as some Word docs done if you want to do some productivity on this tablet. Like I said, there is no active stylus, but you can use your fingers as well to doodle and draw. And like I said, despite the small bezels, I'm not having too much accidental triggers or touches either. I can still grip the tablet comfortably. So again, speaking of reading, whether it's for anime or comics or even just text in general, everything looks clear and again, enjoyable, particularly if you leave the, again, matte screen protector on. It just feels quite responsive when you're gliding around. Now, one thing I will point out though is if you are reading back stuff and you have the gesture mode activated, just to make that gesture navigation bar kind of blend in more with the content, you want to activate the dark mode. Otherwise, this bottom bar will be white in color and that can be a little bit more distracting. So that's as simple as turning on the dark theme. So if we do a comparison here and use the day mode or the bright mode, you have this bar there. Now, if you are really reading back text and things like that, it works fine. But like I said, that's probably an area where having an e-ink display like on a Kindle will do you better in the long term. Now, last but not least, we can talk about some of the casual, let's say, gameplay experience on here. And it's not too surprising that overall it works quite well, especially with lighter games or things like PUBG as well as Asphalt can still be installed and run on here as well. But you may have to lower some of the graphic settings and more demanding titles just for them to still get you the best experience. It may not give you, let's say, the fastest loading times or the smoothest frame rates compared to more gaming-centric phones and tablets out there, but really keeping in mind, again, the price point of this thing, $150, it's, I think, doing very good in terms of the general responsiveness. I'm not seeing too much drop frames, and everything is still, for the most part, definitely playable. Even heavier games, as you can see here, are still good when it comes to just generally browsing around, walking about, things still feel smooth and fluid. Now, under really heavy and demanding games, I will say the bottom left-hand portion of the tablet will start to get a little bit warmer, but still, I was never really able to get it to thermal throttle or anything crazy like that. So overall, I would still say performance has been consistent. Again, you're not going to get 60 FPS on every single title, but for the most part, things are still good enough that it doesn't become distracting, and it still is an enjoyable experience. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Kinstone 103 SD. And like I said, budget tablets have just gotten so much better recently, particularly as this category has seen a bit more of a revival. There was definitely a few years in there where Android tablets kind of seemed dead, but finally we're starting to see devices in this price range become more and more easy to use with excellent build quality coupled with actually pretty fast and responsive performance for things like just browsing the web, watching back videos, small bezels, and a fully laminated screen. Again, the octa-core processor and 4 gigs of RAM, it's all very good, I have to say, for the price. It might be just one of my favorite, I would say slightly generic tablets I've reviewed yet, punching above its weight, again, for the price. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.